Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today we've got this script called Nightmares That Came True. And, yeah, like some seriously creepy stories that might make you leave the lights on tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Ever have a dream so real it sticks with you, like
Oh.
long after you wake up?
Oh, all the time.
What if those fears, those images, started like bleeding into your real life?
Ooh, that sends shivers down my spine just thinking about it.
Right. So this first story is about this young woman named Emma, and her nightmares, they start subtly, she keeps dreaming about walking down this dark street alone, and there's this shadowy figure following her.
Yeah.
And each time she has the dream, it gets more intense, like more and more real.
So it's like a recurring nightmare kind of deal? Those can be scary. They
Yeah.
can definitely be a sign of something a little more serious, especially when they get worse like that.
Oh, for sure.
Ah.
Like, have you ever heard of that anxiety dream link?
Oh, yeah, that's super fascinating.
Yeah.
So research has shown that, like, people who deal with anxiety, they tend to have more nightmares. Yeah, and especially social anxiety. So, like, the theory is that heightened emotional state during the day kind of spills over into their sleep, and then, boom, unsettling dreams.
So you're thinking Emma's nightmares could be telling us something about, like, how she's feeling during the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating.
Like the shadowy figure and the feeling of being followed that could symbolize a fear of being judged or watched, which is common in people with social anxiety.
That makes total sense.
Right.
And, like, this is where her story takes a really creepy turn.
Oh, no.
So after these nightmares start, she begins noticing weird things of her real life, too.
Like what?
Like she'll hear footsteps when no one's there,
Mm-hmm.
or see shadows out of the corner of her eye. It's almost like her mind's playing tricks on her, making her see things.
Yeah, that actually happens pretty often when someone's super anxious, especially after they've had a bunch of bad dreams.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their perception gets all messed up and they start like looking for proof to back up their fears, even if it means they're like misinterpreting normal stuff they see and hear.
So, like, her anxiety is feeding these almost like hallucinations.
Exactly. Her mind's basically primed to see danger everywhere, even if it isn't really there.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, it is.
So it all kind of leads up to this terrifying moment that's like ripped straight from her nightmare.
Oh, no.
So she's walking home alone late at night, just like in her dream.
Mm-hmm.
She hears footsteps, turns around and sees nothing.
Okay.
But then as she's reaching her front door, a hand grabs her shoulder.
Oh, I bet that was terrifying.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Can you imagine that surge of adrenaline? The absolute terror, like her worst fear just appearing out of nowhere?
So the script says she screams, breaks free, and manages to get away.
Yeah.
But the question is, like, what kind of impact would that have on a person? Could you ever really feel safe again after your nightmares literally become real?
That would be super traumatic. I mean, you'd probably be constantly looking over your shoulder, always feeling like you're being watched and totally scared to be alone, especially at night. The line between dream and reality would be so blurry, it'd be tough to ever feel truly safe again.
So in Emma's case, her nightmare wasn't just some random scary images. It was like a manifestation of her anxiety, and her fear actually made her more likely to misinterpret things.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like she created a reality that mirrored her deepest fears.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is.
It just goes to show how powerful our minds can be, how our thoughts and emotions can actually shape the way we see the world and even like affect what happens around us.
Wow, that's some deep stuff.
Right.
So this next story takes a bit of a different turn.
Okay.
This is where that whole idea of dreams as warnings comes into play.
Interesting.
So instead of the nightmare turning into a scary encounter, it's like a potential premonition.
Oh, like a heads up from the dream world? That's a cool idea.
Right.
Yeah.
The idea that our dreams can give us a glimpse into the future has always fascinated people, but scientifically it's still a bit of a mystery.
Totally.
So let's hear this story and get your take. It's about a guy named James, and his recurring nightmare is super vivid. He dreams he's trapped in his apartment and it's on fire. He's surrounded by flames, can't find a way out, and the terror is just palpable.
Oh, man. That sounds awful. I can only imagine that feeling of helplessness, the pure panic he must feel in that dream.
Yeah, it's intense.
Fire is such a primal fear for a lot of people. It represents like losing control, a threat to our very survival.
And the interesting thing is, even when he wakes up, the dream doesn't really leave him. He starts obsessing over checking his smoke detectors, almost like he senses on some level that the nightmare's trying to tell him something, like a warning.
That's actually a pretty normal reaction to a vivid, scary dream.
Oh, yeah.
Our brains are wired for survival, right? So it makes sense that
Yeah.
we'd be more alert, even overly alert after feeling that much fear, even if it was just a dream.
So it's like our inner alarm system getting triggered.
Exactly.
Well, then, and this is where it gets really chilling. His nightmare comes true.
Oh, no.
One night, just as he's drifting off to sleep, he wakes up to the smell of smoke. His apartment's on fire, just like in his dream. He manages to escape, but his place is completely destroyed.
Wow, so his nightmare literally came true. That's insane.
It really makes you think about dreams, doesn't it? Could his subconscious have been picking up on something he wasn't consciously aware of? Like a faulty wire, a gas leak, something his waking mind missed, but his dreaming mind caught.
That's a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Or was it just a really freaky coincidence? Or maybe something else entirely?
It's really hard to say for sure.
Right.
But that's what makes these stories so fascinating. They challenge how we understand the world and the power of the human mind.
So we've got two totally different stories here, both about nightmares becoming reality, but in completely different ways.
Exactly. Yeah, on the one hand, you've got Emma, whose nightmares were like a direct reflection of her anxieties, almost like her fear kind of created the very reality she was afraid of.
It's like her mind was looking for danger everywhere, and that made her more vulnerable to actually experiencing something scary, even if the threat itself wasn't that big.
Exactly. But then there's James, whose nightmare could be seen as a warning, a premonition of a real danger that his waking mind totally missed. It's kind of mind-blowing if James hadn't had those recurring nightmares, if he hadn't been so creeped out that he kept checking his smoke detectors. Would he have even gotten out of that fire in time? It makes you think about the potential for dreams to act as some kind of early warning system.
It really does.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with the whole premonition thing, we got to remember there's no scientific proof that dreams can predict the future.
Right.
There are some crazy stories out there and some interesting research into intuition and subconscious awareness, but no hard evidence.
So it's more like a cool idea than a proven fact.
Yeah, pretty
Right.
much.
Yeah.
And while it's tempting to connect the dots and say James's dream predicted the fire, we got to be careful about assuming cause and effect. It could have been a wild coincidence, or maybe his subconscious picked up on subtle clues that his waking mind missed, like the smell of gas or a flickering light from bad wiring.
So how do we make sense of all this? Science tells us dreams are just our brains processing stuff, sorting through memories and emotions. But then we hear these wild stories that don't have an easy explanation. And it makes you think maybe there's more to dreams than we realize.
It's a question that has puzzled people forever. There are so many different theories about dreams.
Like what?
Well, Freud thought dreams were a window into our deepest desires and stuff we don't want to admit. Jung saw them as our subconscious trying to talk to us using symbols and archetypes. And then you've got more modern theories like the activation synthesis theory, which says dreams are basically our brains trying to make sense of random brain activity during sleep.
So lots of interpretations, but no definite answers. It's like we're still trying to figure out the language of dreams.
Totally. And the more we learn about dreams, the more we realize how much we don't know.
Okay, but going back to these nightmares, why do you think our worst fears pop up in our dreams and sometimes even seem to spill over into our waking lives, like with Emma? Is there a psychological reason for that?
Well, like we talked about, recurring nightmares can be a sign of anxiety or fear that hasn't been dealt with. It's like our subconscious is trying to process these emotions, work through them in a safe space. But sometimes those fears get so strong that they start affecting our thoughts and actions even when we're awake.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're so scared of something that we start seeing it everywhere, even when it's not really there.
Kinda, yeah. Our brains are really good at recognizing patterns. When we're anxious, we tend to look for things that confirm our fears, even if they're not really there or are super vague.
That explains why Emma kept seeing shadows everywhere. Her mind was already looking for danger because of her nightmares.
Exactly. Her anxiety was messing with how she saw things. It's a reminder that our thoughts and beliefs can have a huge impact on our experiences.
That's pretty intense. So how do we stop that from happening? How do we keep our nightmares from taking over?
Well, the first step is awareness. We got to recognize our fears, acknowledge them, and then start challenging them. Ask yourself, is this fear based on something real, or is it just in my head? What proof do I have for this fear?
So it's about not letting fear control us, but facing it head on and trying to figure out where it comes from.
Exactly. Therapy can be super helpful with that. It gives you a safe space to explore your fears, figure out their root causes, and learn healthy ways to cope.
Sometimes we need a little help sorting out those complicated thoughts and emotions.
For sure. Therapy can also help you learn to manage stress and anxiety, which can really help with nightmares, making them less frequent and intense.
Okay, so therapy awareness and challenging our fears. Those are good takeaways. But what about the premonition angle? That our dreams could be warnings or glimpses into the future? Is there any science to back that up?
Like I mentioned earlier, it's a really interesting area of research, but we're still in the dark. There are stories of people having precognitive dreams and some cool research into things like intuition and subconscious perception, but there's no scientific agreement on whether dreams can actually tell the future.
So it's more of a belief than a proven fact.
Yep. And while it's definitely fun to think about, it's important to be skeptical. We got to be careful not to mix up correlation with causation. Just because something happens after you dream about it doesn't mean the dream caused it.
Right, it could just be a coincidence.
Exactly. There could be other things going on that we don't even realize.
Okay, so we need to be careful about seeing dreams as predictions. But what about the idea that our subconscious mind might be trying to tell us something through dreams? Any truth to that?
Now, that's something that's gaining more attention in psychology. Lots of therapists believe that dreams can give us valuable insights into our subconscious thoughts and feelings, even if they're not literally true.
So it's more about understanding the symbolism and emotions in our dreams rather than taking them literally.
Exactly. Dreams can be a goldmine of information about our inner world. Our fears, anxieties, desires, unresolved conflicts. They can be a peek into our subconscious, letting us see parts of ourselves that we're not even aware of.
So it's like our dreams are talking to us in code, and we need to crack that code.
I like that analogy. And that's where dream analysis comes in. It's all about exploring the symbols, emotions, and themes in our dreams to try and figure out what they really mean.
That sounds pretty intense. How do you even start to understand the language of dreams?
It's a journey for sure, and it takes being willing to look deep inside ourselves to explore the hidden parts of our minds. But it can be really rewarding, leading to self-discovery and personal growth.
So while we might not have all the answers about whether dreams can tell the future or warn us about danger, it sounds like we should definitely pay attention to them and try to figure out what they're telling us about ourselves.
Absolutely. Our dreams, even the scary ones, can give us valuable insights into our inner world, helping us understand ourselves better, face our fears, and navigate life with more awareness and strength.
It's wild to think about how powerful our minds are, both like when we're awake and when we're asleep. It makes you wonder about our own dreams. Have you ever had a dream that felt like a warning? Like it was trying to tell you something, even if you didn't know what it was?
Oh, yeah, totally. I've had those dreams. The ones that stick with you even after you wake up. The ones that make you question things or see things differently. Whether they were real warnings or just my subconscious, who knows? But they definitely made me think.
I know what you mean. It's like those dreams leave a mark on you. A feeling, a sense that something's not quite right, or like you need to be extra careful.
Like something's trying to break through, a message we need to hear even if we don't totally get it.
Maybe that's the key. Maybe it's not about figuring out every little detail or taking everything literally. Maybe it's about feeling the vibe, the emotion of the dream. Maybe that's the real message.
That's a cool way to look at it. Maybe dreams aren't so much about seeing the future and more about connecting with our gut feeling, to live with more awareness and be true to ourselves.
So next time we have a crazy dream, especially one that's scary or unsettling, instead of just brushing it off, maybe we should think about it a bit more.
Totally. Explore those emotions, the symbols that stand out, and think about what your subconscious might be trying to tell you. It could be a sign that something needs fixing in your life, a fear to face, a choice to make, or even a new path to try.
It's pretty awesome to think that our dreams could help us understand ourselves and where we fit in the world.
It is. While we might not always have clear answers or easy solutions, thinking about our dreams can help us grow as people understand ourselves better and get a better handle on how our minds work.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, one last thought. Have you ever had a dream that felt like a warning, or one that actually came true? We'd love to hear your stories. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep diving deep.